to the Teacher Podcast for Jay-Sean Richards Educational Profile, presented by myself, Rebecca Bruzik. Here's a roadmap of what I will be discussing throughout this podcast. Definition of learning disabilities, classification process, response to intervention, RTI, educational profile, effective strategies, and corresponding theory. So, definition of learning disabilities. There are 4 federal definitions. These come from Lerner and John. The first one states that the individual has a disorder in one or more of the basic psychological processes. The individual has difficulty in learning, specifically in speaking, listening, writing, reading, and mathematics. The problem is not primarily due to other causes such as visual or hearing impairments, motor disabilities, mental retardation, emotional disturbance, economic, environmental, or cultural disadvantages. Common definitions for learning disabilities. These also come from Lerner and John. The first one stating that learning disabilities are related to a central nervous system of dysfunction and have a biological bias. Learning disabilities may occur or coexist along with other disabilities or condition, and the problem is intrinsic to the individual and is due to factors within the person rather than to external factors such as environment or the educational system. The classification process between RTI and the discrepancy model. The discrepancy model is an identification of a large or severe gap between a student's potential for learning and what the student has actually learned, where RTI is a procedure used to identify students through evidence-based interventions prior to academic problems or failure. The reasons for adapting the RTI model rather than the discrepancy model is the discrepancy models are usually inaccurate measures of intelligence. They can be racially and cultural biased. They wait to identify students after he or she has failed, and discrepancy models have no clear method for defining severe discrepancy. RTI has clear advantages for teachers, such as increases students' outcomes and accountability, uses readily accessible materials that are evidence-based and scientifically researched, helps all students without attaching labels, and promotes collaboration. Advantages for the students when using RTI. It allows all students the ability to be exposed to evidence-based strategies, allows students to track growth through evidence-based data collection, instructional based on students' needs, and helps build positive relationships with peers and adults. So looking at Jay-Sean's IEP, he is in the 4th grade. Date of birth is 11/24/99. He does live with both of his parents, Jackson and Shauna Richards. School was Wilmington Elementary. His primary language is English, and his disability classification is specific learning disability. Jay-Sean's present level of educational performance. Jay-Sean is a 4th grade student whose disability inhibits his ability to read required material in his class. Jay-Sean can read orally 95 out of 100 words correctly in 2 minutes from a 2nd grade level paragraph and 40 out of 100 words in 2 minutes from a 3rd grade level paragraph. Jay-Sean can answer 4 out of 5 comprehension questions from a passage read to him at the 2nd grade level, where 0 out of 5 comprehension questions at the 3rd grade level. So based on Jay-Sean's PLAF statement, I have conducted 2 annual goals. His first annual goal Jay-Sean will read 98 out of 100 words correctly from a 3rd grade level reading passage by the end of the 4th marking period by using Read Naturally strategy. Based on his annual goal, I broke his short-term objectives into 3 based on the marking periods. So for the first marking period, Jay-Sean will read 23 out of 25 words correctly, 48 out of 50 words correctly by the end of the 2nd marking period, and 73 out of 75 words correctly by the end of the 3rd marking period. Jay-Sean's second annual goal is that he will answer 5 out of 5 comprehension questions at the 3rd grade level by the end of the 4th marking period. Again, I broke his objectives down into 2 to reach his annual goal based upon the marking period. So for the second marking period, Jayshawn will answer 3 out of 5 comprehension questions and 4 out of 5 comprehensions by the third marking period. Looking at types of service or modification and location, times, days per week, beginning date and duration. This will be in the elementary school. He will be in another resource room 5 days a week for 30 minutes per session. Based on his goal of reading 98 out of 100 words correctly from a third grade level reading passage by the end of the fourth marking period by using Read Naturally strategy, the title of intervention is to increase Jayshawn's reading fluency from a third grade level reading passage. He will be in a tier 3, which is an intense instruction besides him getting tier 1 and tier 2 help additionally. The intervention setting is the general education classroom or a resource room. Persons responsible for implementing intervention would be the general education teacher or myself being the special education teacher. And the main strategy being used to implement the intervention is Read Naturally. The rationale for the strategy will allow Jayshawn to read a passage out loud while listening to it on tape. Monitoring progress, Jayshawn will be monitored by cold reading score marked with a blue pencil after practice of a passage. Another score will be recorded using a red colored pencil. The fidelity of implementation is every day by graphing progress on a chart after reading each passage. So looking at Jayshawn's graph just after reading a couple passages, you can see the baseline is the goal where we want him to be reading. And the red, which is his warm reading passages, this is where he has practiced the passage and has read it to a teacher. And the cold reading is when he just does it the first time through without any practice or any intervention. The intervention outcome is that Jayshawn has been doing very well with his reading. He is slowly making progress, but that is what we want to see happen. When using the strategy Read Naturally, it gives Jayshawn a chance to hear the story while he is reading it out loud. Jayshawn records his words correct per minute and graphs his number on his chart. He seems to be enjoying the passages. Actions to be taken. What I believe should happen is that the strategy should be implemented school-wide for Jayshawn. Every classroom Jayshawn comes in contact with should be able to use this strategy to encourage verbal interactions, not only with Jayshawn, but also other students that might need this Read Naturally strategy. Jayshawn did not begin to read until he was in kindergarten. He did know a few sight words. Jayshawn does try his best when he is reading. Overall, he is a very good student. Jayshawn's attendance is good. He's only missed a couple of days in the last few years due to illness. Jayshawn has a peanut allergy and was born 1 month premature. Jayshawn enjoys playing basketball and soccer with his friends. He also likes to help his dad work on cars. Jayshawn is a visual and analytic learner. He likes to process the information through visuals. Strategies that work for Jayshawn would be pictures, charts, and graphic organizers. Jayshawn's multiple intelligence preference is logical and mathematical. Abilities with quantitative thinking, numbers, logical, and patterns. So effective strategies that I will be working with Jayshawn on is the Read Naturally, which will help Jayshawn with his reading fluency, and also directed reading thinking activity, which will help Jayshawn with his reading comprehension. Corresponding theory. The cognitive psychological is the model that is used for the intervention of Jayshawn. The cognitive model is the human process of learning, thinking, and knowing. Jayshawn needs to practice more on his reading fluency, and by using his short-term memory, it will transfer to his working memory, then to long-term memory. This cognitive psychological looks closely at the internal mental state. And the references that I use throughout my podcast are Aceves, Witten, Woodrow, 2009, and Lerner and Johns of 2009. Thank you again for listening to the podcast on Jayshawn, and I look forward to working with you.